what are some of the more exciting, amenities? So the pavilion up there, if you've been up on the ridge, you've probably drove past it and you're like, man, that kind of looks like a spaceship. That's for a reason. But
we want UFO sightings to be reported in the area.
One of the coolest things that I like about this, and I know it's important to a lot of St. George residents, especially ones that have been here their whole life, right? The families. There's some protection of the vistas that they really value, right? And so it's important that having a skyscraper, right, building up on a ridge, on top of a ridge, is not what they find ideal.
Right.
But with some of the way we've set, the way you have set up the setbacks, to where even when you're on the ridge, it's set back into the center of the plateau. So it's not going to feel like there's this massive building right on the edge of the plateau, right?
That's correct.
When you drive past that pavilion, you're like, oh, that doesn't seem like that big. It actually kind of looks small. And then you like stand in the middle of it and you're like, this pavilion's huge.
Yep.
you could definitely have a whole stage and put on a whole show there. So, which I think is just such a cool, there's a little optical illusion to it. But that pavilion, you've kind of has it as centered as around like a community space, right?
Yeah, the pavilion, if you stand in the direct center of the pavilion and you look south, you're looking exactly where the old runway used to be. So we'll end up setting like an airplane monument, which we've bought. We've now bought
cool.
Or we're in the process of buying it.
Yeah.
And it's a historical one. We'll announce that later.
It's
cool. Really cool. It's like a rare find. Like
cool.
one that has actually history in the area.
Yeah.
Anyway, when you stand in the center of the pavilion, you look to the south and you're looking right down the old runway. And so we're going to have a little airplane, looks like it's taken off there. And then like a memory plaque that talks about the old runway and also different experiences that were connected to it. When you look directly east from the pavilion, it's perfectly lined up with the center of the temple. Cool. So you've got that historical connection that you're looking right on the city.
Yeah.
And anybody should do it. Go stand right in the center of the temple center of the pavilion and look right at the temple, look right south, and you'll see how we designed it.
Yeah. So you really have that thinking in place. What other, because I know there's some other things that you've kicked around. There's lots of ideas, right? Yeah. Innovative thinking. What are some of the other exciting things that you want to put up there as far as experiences goes?
Well, the trail system, for one, when we talk about a 5K surrounding the trail, you're used to, St. George has a lot of great trails. But we're making sure this isn't second tier to anything. Like the two main roads down on the south end, they're being bridged with pedestrian bridges. So you'll be able to like hit the trail on the exterior and run the whole system without conflicting with traffic. And it'll also be like a commuter or connection trail.
Cool.
So the trail is actually going to be one of the most exciting things. And that all gets turned over to the city of St. George. So it becomes a public amenity. Any of the public can go use it. Mm-hmm. But it'll also connect all the retail together. So if you live in apartments on the north side of Tech Ridge and you want to just take a walk or run or anything to, let's say, the grocery store in the center, you've got that pedestrian connection that really is pretty unique. Mm-hmm. And we're making that 12 feet wide, so it's really convenient and nice and lit at night. I'm really excited about the trail systems.
Yeah, and how it connects to all of the different parts of the ridge.
And then our goal is to connect it to downtown. So our goal is to bring that down and, run an actual pedestrian overpass over the top of Bluff Street and land on the south side of Smith's. That's not approved yet, not done. I'm just throwing it out there.
It's like these are the thought process is like, how do we connect this high density community to the downtown, the historic downtown of St. George, right?
That's right. With pedestrians. So like if you hate traffic, right?
Yeah, because I think
not going to have a traffic problem.
I think everybody agrees. They're like, well, all these people, all you're going to do is create more traffic. But the idea would be, we have to start thinking walkable community. We have to start thinking of alternative ways of getting from point A to point B, and getting closer together is how we do it. At least in Washington County, because we don't have a lot of space to be able to do it. We just don't.
Well, two things are going to make Tech Ridge just amazing for traffic, and one is the walkable community, and the other is the 3-minute connection to the freeway. Yeah. So like if you're leaving somewhere else, boom, you're on the freeway in 3 minutes. You're not going to really fight through all the traffic of anywhere,
downtown or anything like that. Yeah.
And then everything's going to be walkable for you. So you're not going to be as much of a contributor to the traffic, but we want to make that connection right to downtown. So you could jump on like a scooter or a bike or whatever and hit downtown, whatever's your convenience. But personally, I love walkability.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always trying to think of like outside of walkability, because a lot of our community doesn't have the physical ability to, right? We have a lot of retirees here, or they just are lazy and they would rather jump in the car.
Yep.
Have you thought about any, like, aside from the trail, any people mover type stuff in there? I mean, I guess when you drive up there, the cars I think you
we're
had mentioned
making it convenient for the cars.
Yeah.
So nobody will have to totally change their habits. It's really going to be kind of an at-will thing. So we're making them kind of independent of each other. Like the cars, you'll be able to access everything, park within reasonable distances. To walk, like we're building different focused parking garages. And so you'll be able to park and walk not too far. Like anybody in the community, the elderly should be able to handle it. But then the trail system is going to be almost independent. And have you ever been to Riverwalk in San Antonio?
Oh, yeah.
So like, how you can really come in the front of all the hotels, but then you can also jump on this trail system in the back and connect to everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
That's basically the concept here. So if you want to be walkable, you're not going to have to, it's going to feel like you're in a different world. Like you don't have to compete with the traffic.
Oh, that's going to be awesome. See, and I think that's such a cool it's not a compromise. It's a consensus of saying, hey, we need these things to happen, and what's the best possible outcome that we can make happen from these. I think the wage growth and I think economic impact. You want to go to that one, Brandon? It's the fourth tab in. This is something that I think was the most made the most sense to me out of all of the idea, right? Because I think it's easy to get swept away with like having cool buildings and trails and a different downtown feel than the current St. George downtowns, right? Is that kind of the thought process? But the economic impact I think is important. So tell me how do you envision this going and what is it really going to mean for the community? From a dollar perspective.
Thank you. It's one of my favorite topics. It's what makes everything else make sense. Like, how have you ever driven down to Vegas and you're like, oh my gosh, how the hell do they afford to spend how do they afford to make this so awesome? Like Vegas, by the way, spoils you for everywhere else. Like they just make the coolest things.
Yeah.
And you wonder how they afford that. And the single answer is money. Like you have to have a massive economic impact if you want to make really cool stuff.
Right.
And so the way Tech Ridge works, all the tech companies, like I'll use Busy as an example, but all the others up there, they're basically the same thing. Think of it like import-export of dollars. Like, Busy is selling to all over the country. We had 80,000 users, like 4,000 paying companies across the US, Canada, Australia. And so you're basically bringing dollars in from other places into St. George. And then you're feeding them back out into the economy by paying your payroll. And so you pay these high-paying jobs, these high-paying wages. And people working there on Tech Ridge, for these different companies, it's importing money from outside, and then they're taking that money and they're putting it into the community, whether they're buying things or getting their car repaired or whatever the case is, going to lunch, you name it, right? And then that money cycles within the community because then they spend that money in the community, and the people that work in at the restaurant, they spend money somewhere else, and so that cycles. And so what you end up getting is about an 8x benefit. Wow. So you take the amount of payroll, like the average person on Tech Ridge makes, let's say, $100,000, which is probably about right. So that has an annual economic benefit of $800,000 per employee. And that, if you scroll down a little bit, that's how you come to some of these numbers where it's like, that's the one-time, scroll a little bit more, that's the one-time impact for
construction.
And this is the long-term impacts. This is the recurring impact, which is real important, it produces about 6,000 direct jobs, which spurs another 10,000 indirect jobs. And that produces an annual labor of about $1 billion. And the indirect jobs are part of that 8x impact. And so the direct jobs have about 8 times impact. And that ends up coming out to an economic impact of just about $3.2 billion annually, which is unbelievably massive.
That's huge.
But I want to start with the way that works, because a lot of people are like, well, how does that work? That's how it works, is you're bringing outside money in, and then it's getting fed into the community, buying houses, you name it. I mean, it's just, and it creates that economic activity and kind of energizes it.
Yeah, Clint Reed and I talked about it when I had him on the episode. We talked a little bit about that, about how, you're selling a product outside of our community, right? Yep. It's not serving specifically our community, but it's employing people that then now have money that they can put in where they live, right? Yep. And thinking about how Microsoft changed Seattle, like it literally changed the complete demographic, everything about Seattle was changed because of just one company, Microsoft, right? Yeah. And it's interesting because I had Gary Henderson, who used to work for Microsoft back in the day. He lived in Seattle. And then Devin McDonald, they both live here now.
Oh, cool.
But they grew up and lived in Seattle like pre-Microsoft. And then now they're here and they saw what it did to their community. And, over that long tier, it really does adapt and change the community. And so when we think about what is it that the future of Southern Utah, what do we want it to maintain? I think all of us want to maintain outdoor space.
Yep.
Which means being conscious about what we build, because once we got it, that's what we get, right?
Yep.
The redevelopment's really expensive. And if it's just retirement and vacation homes, right? Like if that's all we're ever going to be, it's going to be very difficult to maintain the current trajectory where we're at, right? It's just going to be really difficult.
I love your word maintain, because that connects me back to like something I forgot in the conversation of the city's vision. The number one thing everybody wanted to maintain was their kids.
Yeah.
Like they wanted, like, why do you want high paying jobs in the area? Well, it's like, I want my kids to not have to move away from me, my kids and my grandkids. Like, and everybody had a consensus on that. Like when the city council first approached us, the mayor, the city manager, everybody, that was the consensus. Like we're known for exporting our talented youth. We don't want to export them anymore. We want to create opportunities here local, and we want to maintain the relationship with our kids. And so when, some people are like, well, is that a change to St. George? Yeah. In some ways it's a positive change, because you have a lot of youth that are saying, okay, I don't know if I've got an opportunity here that meets the threshold of what I'd like to have. And so they go elsewhere to find it.
Yeah.
And that was one of the primary tasks when we say recruit and retain top talent. The city, because of their constituents, retain was the big one. They're like, we want to be able to, our students graduating from Utah Tech, our kids in the area, we want to be able to maintain them.
Yeah.